Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now last week we talked about DHCP reservations versus static IPs and why I prefer DHCP reservations. Now there were a few people came back in the comments saying I was wrong and fair enough, you've got your own views and I've got mine and that's what makes us human. Now for the guy that has routers failing regularly and power cuts 2 or 3 times a day, well, I think you've got bigger problems and a UPS to protect your routers might be a good idea. Now, moving on to today's topic of DNS. What is DNS and what can it do for me? Well, DNS is Domain Name System. And you might not know what it is, but you probably use it daily. Now, its functionality is to simply translate a name, a device name or a website name into an IP address that your computer can understand, and then your computer can go and target that IP address with its request. Now take something simple like www.google.com. You know it, you type it fairly regularly, I should think. But your PC can't translate that into an IP address without the use of DNS. So DNS is like the phone book, if you like, for the computer networks, for the internet, and also potentially at home. It takes the name www.google.com, or in my case, FPP93 and Baldric DMX, and it turns them into IP addresses that your computer can then talk to. Now, when your home router provides both a DHCP and a DNS service, chances are it's storing them both in the same little database internally, and that's where things can be really useful. So when my FPP instance here puts in a DHCP request, it not only tells the router its MAC address, but it'll also give it its host name. In this case, this one's called FPP93. I think you can probably guess why. So it puts in a request to say, can I have an IP address, please? Here is my MAC address, and here is my host name. The router here will store the MAC address, the host name, and the IP address in its little database. And then it knows what the name of the device is that it's assigned the IP address to. Now that's useful because my laptop over here can come along and it can say, hello, I'm looking for a device with the name of FPP93. Do you know its IP address? And my router can say, yes, I do. Here it is. And then, if that's all working nicely, it means that we can put host names into FPP or Xlights instead of IP addresses. And then we don't care what the IP address is because our device would talk to our router. It will say, what's the IP address? And our router will say, there you go, that's the IP address today. Tomorrow, if it's a different IP address, the router will simply say, there you go, that's its IP address. And away we go. So the whole IP addressing thing is out of the window. Now we do have a potential gotcha, and that is not all domestic routers support DNS properly. The PlusNet device that I was looking at last week says it does, but it doesn't. All it does is it chucks any request that comes in straight upstream to your internet provider. Now, whether you're using your ISPs, DNS services, Google, Cloudflare, whoever, they're not going to know what FPP93 is or what Baldric DMX is because they didn't issue the IP addresses. The router did. So it's imperative that your router supports DHCP and DNS locally for this to work. Enough of the ramblings. Let's have a look at on screen and see what I'm talking about. Now I'm going to open a standard Windows program. First of all, a command prompt, and then I'm going to use the standard Windows application called NSLookup. And that will translate our name into an IP address. So if I do an NSLookup of FPP93, so here we can see that my laptop has gone off to talk to the router at 192.168.2.1, which is the Draytech device here. It's gone off to talk to it and say, what's the IP address of FPP93? And the router has come back and said, here you go, it's 192.168.2.64. So that one's working. Let's have another go. We'll try it with Baldric DMX. And there we go. We can see that it's come back with 192.168.2.97 for Baldric DMX. So this is working on this particular little setup. I've got my Pi and my Baldric DMX. They're both cabled to a dumb little switch which is hiding out of shot over there, as is the router, and there's nothing else connected. There's just the four devices, my laptop, the router, and these two, and they're all connected via the little switch. And that's working perfectly. So I'm going to load the controller manually now. I'm going to load the Baldric DMX. So I'm going to go add Ethernet. Our name is going to be, I'm just going to call it DMX. Our description can be left. Vendor is I like that. Model Baldric DMX. Beautiful. The only thing that's left is the IP address. And instead of putting in the IP address in here, we can actually put in the host name because it's going to be resolved locally. Baldric DMX, that was close. Baldric DMZ, that was close. And I'm going to be using DDP. There we go, that's happy. I can save. And now when I click the open button on the bottom right, it should open a new window and it's going to load straight away Baldric DMX. There it is. So there we go, a short and sweet one this week looking at DNS or domain name system. If your local router supports it, then happy days. We don't need to faff about with IP addresses. We can just use the host names instead. It does, of course, mean that the devices need to be on DHCP for this to work, because that's the time when the devices will talk to the router and they will say, can I have an IP address? Here is my MAC address, here is my host name, blah, blah, blah. And it's at that point that the entries get added into the DHCP and DNS table on your router, and it's from there that they're then available. If you set up a static IP on these, it wouldn't work because they've not been added to the DNS and DHCP table on the router. As always, I hope you found that useful. I hope the shows are going well. If you're up and running, and if you're not quite there yet, then good luck. Fingers crossed that it all comes together. I'm sure it will. And finally, well done to Brad and Candice Luma on winning the Great Christmas Light Fight last night. Brilliant news for one of our friends, and well done helping to boost the community. Commiserations, of course, to everybody else. Some really good shows, as I understand it. I've not seen it yet here in the UK because we have to acquire it by means that are not quite desirable, and I can't do that today. So I'm going to do that later, and then we can see it over the weekend. Have fun, take care, see you next time.